a webinar together and a panel of experts to talk about this really important topic of digital transformation in the water sector. First of all, I'm Daniel Sullivan. I'm the CEO of Iota Services, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of South East Water, a water utility in Victoria, Australia. Digital transformation is really running a risk of being a fairly overused term in the water sector. I think there's dreams of it being a fully automated water utility where algorithms do everything for us and we can invent new ways to deliver water. But it's also at risk of being stuck in small digital metering pilots with little chances of scaling. So it can mean a lot of different things to different people, and this panel webinar was an opportunity to really explore digital transformation and what it means. For example, we'll be trying to articulate what it looks like when you get there. It's really important to understand how you're going to get there and how long it might take, let alone questions about how much this might cost for the organisation and its customers. One thing I know from my time at South East Water is that it does take a real push to build momentum and to maintain momentum around digital transformation. And it's really important that the water sector shares its learnings and collaborates with each other on this journey. That way we can help each other avoid the pitfalls, build a persuasive investment case, and reinforce the need to go digital as a sector. But it's also really important to look beyond our industry and gather learnings and insights from other industries and from overseas. And so to get those fresh perspectives, we've assembled an amazing panel of experts from both within and outside of the Australian water sector. I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves shortly, but we're really pleased to have representatives from the UK water sector, the energy sector, and a representative from our very own South East Water here in Australia. We'll be exploring topics such as what does digital transformation mean? What are some examples of initiatives of digital transformation? What are the economics of transformation? And how you build and maintain momentum in your digital transformation. So at this point, I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And first of all, Angela, if I could ask you to introduce yourself all the way over from the UK, and thank you for coming on this panel at such an early time over there.
Thank you very much. It's really good to be here and to be able to be part of this panel. So thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm Dr. Angela McOsker. I'm a PhD physical chemist by training, and I'm head of innovation at Northumbrian Water. And I've been in post now for approximately 3 years. And it's been an absolutely fantastic time to join the water sector. I actually gained my innovation stripes, if you like, primarily from the fast-moving goods sector. So I was with Procter & Gamble for 17 years, doing amazing innovation, front-end innovation work with them, primarily in their laundry business. And for those of you that have ever used bold lavender and chamomile, that is my gift to the world and one of my creations. So absolutely delighted to be here with my water hat on now that I'm at Northumbrian Water.
Thank you very much, Angela. And I'll just give a little plug for Northumbrian's Innovation Festival, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And it's a phenomenal initiative, I think, from a global perspective to harness and understand innovation within water and put out challenges that we all have as a sector and try and harness the global expertise around that. We'll send out some information about that, Angela, later.
Cool, thank you.
Right, and our next guest is Tony Duff.
Hi there, thanks very much for that introduction. So yeah, I'm Tony Duff. I've come from the energy industry, 25 years or so, most recently as a head of transformation on a Australian gen tailor and retail organisation. I'm currently consulting to Iota, doing some work with the guys as they progress through their digital transformation, but also been involved with working with the energy networks in Southeast Australia on electric vehicle trial, which has been quite an interesting journey. My background is mainly finance. I've done a lot of finance in the energy and construction industries. So I'm looking forward to having a good discussion going forward.
Thanks, Tony. Really looking forward to your insights on the economics of digital transformation as well. And the next and final host is Andrew Forster Knight, who is the General Manager for Digital Utility for South East Water. And I'll ask you to introduce yourself, please, Andrew.
Well, thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Andrew Forster Knight, as Dan said, General Manager of the Digital Utility Group at South East Water. My background, I've been in the water industry for over 18 years now, largely in the engineering capacity, operational technology, SCADA, that sort of world, and now it's led its way to the IoT and the digital utility. I think just from my perspective, the conversation is definitely starting to shift in recent times. It was very much all about the technology and how to do things a few years ago. I think we're largely solving that, and now the question is, what do we do with all this data and how do we change our business? So looking forward to having the chat today. Thanks, Dan.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And so just for everyone in our audience today, and thank you for logging in again and your time this afternoon, this morning, or in the middle of the night, as the case may be, wherever you are. The format will be, we will be asking some questions to the panelists, and this will go for probably the next half an hour, 45 minutes. There'll be time at the end for questions from the audience to be posed to the panel as well. So please do get them in, submit them through the chat channel, and we will we'll get to those questions. If not during this, then we should be able to get back to them through the chat or in other ways. This is being recorded as well, so we will send around the version of the recording later, and please feel free to share that with anybody that you like. So the first question that I'm going to direct to the panel, and first of all, I'm going to direct this to Angela. Angela, what does digital transformation mean both to you as an executive in the water sector, but also to Northumbrian, being a water utility in the United Kingdom?
So digital transformation is as you said, a really hot topic, and I think could be a real game changer for the water sector, given the huge amount of assets and the Herculean task that we have to provide water to our customers and communities. And I think we definitely need to embrace a digital transformation in order for us to be able to do that as best as we can. And Northumbrian Water, being the business that it is actually our aim to be the most digital water company. So we've set out our stall now for many years as this is being our objective. Our CIO set that mission for us, and I think that it really has put us on the front foot in terms of how we operate our business. It is a huge task. We have some very, very tough challenges, such as climate change, an aging asset base, and also an increased demand on our products and services. So therefore, more than ever, we need digital transformation to help us really improve the products and services that we give to our customers, the experience that we give to our employees, to help us protect the environment, and also to really help and support the communities that we're part of. And we really see that digital plays a really key role in each one of these aspects, and is something that we're fully embracing and moving forward with. But I absolutely want to agree with what Andrew had said, that probably it was more traditional about the technologies and the bits of kit, but also now it's actually how we use the data and what we can do with data, not only ours, but also available open data sets in order for us to really make the most of this opportunity.
Yeah, I think I could probably add on to that, the data side there, Angela, particularly in the energy industry, who probably is a little bit further advanced, particularly in the rollout of smart metering, for instance, in Victoria, is that what we saw is a richness of data coming through on how our customers behave, what their energy usage is. But what that did was actually generate a different adjunct to our business models in the retail sector, because we then understood our customers better and offer different products to those customers. So was sort of an offshoot to the digital metering rollout, that we actually then had more insights, and then those insights become a valuable asset to that business, particularly in a competitive market. So it's one of those additional values that we can get from that transformation.
And yeah, Dan, obviously concur with both panelists there, but I guess at Southeast Water, just had a different perspective slightly. What transformation means, it's about also not doing technology projects in isolation, which we've probably been guilty of in the past, but really having that end-to-end approach to deliver out on our business strategies. And for us, it's driving the change across the whole enterprise. Some of our major initiatives that we'll probably touch on later, they really do touch across the whole business, lots of teams, lots of systems, lots of integration and automation, all those nice things. But we wouldn't be doing them if the end goal wasn't sort of customer value, better customer experience, business efficiency, and just sustainable delivery.
I think the term digital transformation is bandied around, and it's quite broad. But one of the lessons learned that some of the bigger transformation programs I've been involved with in the energy industry is it's multidimensional. You'll have obviously an implementation of technology, but that technology is underpinning process change. So new technology delivers changes in our processes. We would have all seen back office processes in robotic process automation, changing the way we do accounts payable, accounting, and things like that. Well, that drove a change in process. But also on top of that, there's our business models will change. We now start to having more emphasis on data analytics, data scientists, and those sort of skill sets that we didn't have previously. Our models change where we're now offering digital solutions in the cloud rather than shop front experiences. Then we also look at organizational change and cultural change. And with a successful transformation is looking at all those three things. To having the tools and having the process change, but without the mindset change that goes with it. Some of the lessons I've learned in our early transformation programs in the energy sector was that we didn't change the hearts and minds of the people. So that we tend to have people doing workarounds in their processes. The old ways, they're more comfortable, and that was easier to use. So it's important that when you do a digital transformation, you actually look at all three elements to be successful.
I think you raised a really good point there, because really at the heart of this is human-centered design, because without people, whether it be employees or customers, really embracing and getting on board with what you're doing, then really you can leave people behind. And as you can say, people become very wily and create all sorts of creative workarounds rather than actually using, as intended. So I think that on both sides of the coin, for the customer, it has to be super easy. They have to see a benefit for themselves for why they would jump on board with what you're doing. And then also from an employee point of view, if you're very digitally minded, it can be a very positive thing. But if you have, some gaps in your digital literacy, then it can actually be a very scary thing. And so it definitely need to bring people with you and give people the skills and tools to be able to use what you're providing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Tony, you touched on process. Just probably a challenge for us has been that mindset around not just digitizing the same old process, but actually looking at it from the ground up and re-engineering. So that, and obviously that's got balance and compromise as to how you do that, but that's been a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I think one of the things, the mantras that we have adopted in prior transformations was adopt, not adapt. So we're adopting a new process which is underpinned by new technology, not trying to adapt the technology into the old process. And I think that's a key for that success.
So I think the digital transformation definitely has impact at the customer level, at the employee level. I mean, as an employee, you don't want to fill out manual forms, the extent that you can digitize those processes. And I think the same follows for customers. And then some of those deeper business processes, there's definite efficiencies there. But I'm really interested in what impact it has for the operating model and the business model of the business itself. I mean, a lot of these startups that are coming out of California or Israel or other parts of the world are, born digital. So right from the get-go, their whole central nervous system's digital. The water sector's got to kind of bring that in. Is there an opportunity to change how they operate, how they build customers, and their whole business model because of digital.
Absolutely. I think we can, in the energy industry in Australia in particular, is that particularly in mass market and the retail, your customer base is so diverse. You'll have tech savvy, digital savvy customers, and you'll have customers who are dyed in the wool and paper based. And so you need to develop solutions for both. And so most people would tend to do most of their interactions with their energy provider through an app. It's not in, it wasn't that long ago where you'd walk into a store to connect your electricity, but now it's all done seamlessly through apps. And I think it's the response of the energy providers in a competitive market to say, well, what do our customers want? And they want convenience, they want it simple, and they want it cheaper. So to be able to do that, you need a digital solution. And so it's really evolving based on what our customers need, but also the pressures for that competitive advantage to be able to provide a good customer experience, but at the same time deliver at a lower cost. So I think the opportunity is to balance those both up. And you made a good point, Dan. The startups would not have those legacy issues with their customer base, whereas particularly where if in a lot of utility space, they were born from monopolies or born from grudge purchases, if you like. Everybody needs water, everyone needs power. And so they would tend to be slower to move. So the opportunity to get into a digital transformation to deliver better quality customer experience and have that hybrid and transition to that more digital experience.
I would definitely echo that for the UK. We have customers that still don't have mobile phones, which seems like an incredible thing as we're on our iPhone 12s or whatever we're on now. And certainly for the younger generation, they've never been without phones. So again, like something incomprehensible for our younger customers, but certainly we need to be able to cater for all of our customer base and give everybody a good experience. But definitely we are on that urge to get people over to digital because people are now, expectations I think are even higher, set probably by banking, by energy, by sectors that are ahead of ourselves in terms of, I only have to look at Amazon that now in certain places can deliver within a couple of hours. This is what people are benchmarking their experience, the experience of our company against these other businesses, which is why we are having to adapt and challenge ourselves to deliver the best experience that we can. So we've also been modifying. Before, you would have to have stayed in a whole day for the water person to come and sort out your issues. Now people are wanting to like bookable hour slots, so they're not having to take a day off work. So we're having to mirror what's going on and having to run quite fast in a way that we probably haven't really been geared up to. We have a lot of legacy stuff. We're not an agile, digital startup. We have a lot of stuff to get up to date.
And I agree with that, Angela. To your point, Dan, the disruption is definitely on the internal side for us. Our customers expect these digital services because they get it through all their peer industries and things like that, airlines and internet. So I think for us, like, there's only so much you can bite off with capability in your organization and change fatigue, etc. So we are finding that there is also a sweet spot for a transition step rather than sort of full transformation, while we sort of balance cost and resource and that internal appetite for change. So that's something we're working on, and having the staff engaged, bringing them on the journey is absolutely key for South East Water.
I want to just drill into that point a bit more, Andrew. It's around water utilities and energy businesses as well. Tony, have a commitment to the community to maintain safety and keep the lights on or keep the water flowing. And there's a non-negotiable around a minimum essential service level. How do you then add on this digital transformation in a business where the culture might be about reliability and making sure that those essential services are provided? And how do you avoid that risk of having almost two organisations in one?
At Northumbrian Water, we had for our we're we're always on a journey, I think, with this, but certainly we had a really huge shift, really changing our processes to a fully end-to-end system. So what we did is we actually carved out a new group with representatives from right across the business, who in the background were setting up our new digital process, while the majority of the workforce was still continuing the day job and getting the work done. And then over the last probably 18 months, we've then been switching over, which has been quite a huge program, but is definitely paying dividends. And we're really seeing, you know, gigantic improvements by being able to see the journey right from that customer call right through to the completed job and everything in between, and digitizing all of the steps to enable a really seamless service for the customer, but also for our employees, really giving them the information that they need so we can do first time fix and really be on point for that job in a way that we just weren't able to previously. So a massive transformation, but we did have 2 tracks running.
And Angela, we were similar. We've just in recent times created a dedicated digital utility group for that very purpose, to really give it focus across and sort of to recognize that it is really end to end and touches so many parts of the business. But to your point, Dan, like, how do you bring people on? I think it's sort of somewhat comes to a head, like our asset base continues to grow and our customer base continues to grow, and we're constantly sort of being asked to do more with less, and sort of no one sees that more than probably sort of the operations staff and others. So where you can show examples of automation that leads to great efficiencies for them, or big wins, or early detection of something, I think that's how we've the approach we've taken to try and bring them on board.
I think in the energy industry, I think if any organisation in their 5-year strategic plan didn't have a digital transformation roadmap, they were missing out. And I think in the early days, the capability wasn't in-house, and so the early adopters partnered up with people who had that experience and could deliver that, because the key was the first to get to that market to deliver those experiences, or to have more efficiencies from their generation plants, would have the advantage, particularly in an Australian competitive market scenario. So, but what you're finding now is that the capability is being grown in-house. But initially it was outsourced, if you like, or partnered, but now it's coming in, and then they're building that skill sets, more data analytics, more data scientists, and the digital capability to build their own apps and build their own platforms is very important. Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to know a little bit about Northumbrian and a bit more about South East Water and how they're approaching it. And I think I might be fair to say that Northumbrian's looking at digital transformation across the whole organisation, so a bit more broadly than South East Water, as South East Water is going a bit deeper into a particular part of its business that it's transforming. And in South East Water, it's more around digital metering and all the associated processes and impacts around that. Could maybe, if both of you could talk about just some of the benefits around those 2 different approaches, the breadth versus the depth.
So from Northumbrian Water's point of view, you're absolutely right that our digital transformation is touching everything and everybody, and this is definitely the approach that we have taken in order to be fit for the future, seeing where what our customers are wanting and needing, what we need to do for our employee base to give them a good experience and to help them do their job as well as they can. But then also looking at, you know, how we can embrace smart networks. Certainly we have a very aging asset base that was anything but smart. So we've had to work really hard in order to really increase the insight that we have and can generate from our network by the use of the likes of smart meters, by looking at leveraging sensing technologies. But one of the big challenges that we have, the technologies are out there, but they are the technologies are definitely out there, but it's the affordability piece. So one of the key things that I'm interested in looking at moving forward is business model innovation. So I think that the technology innovation is there, but the actual affordability piece, when you're wanting to do it at such mass in order to really make a change, I think is the piece that we need to work on next.
And for us at Southeast Water, I think we're very similar, Angela, to a degree there. So underpinning our initiative is this deployment of this million odd devices, but it's very much an IoT play rather than a meter play. It just happens to be that digital meters are the bulk of the fleet and the sort of the big ticket item to kick things off. What's driving it is really two things for us. Once we deploy all the tech and we get all the data, it's really about that customer engagement piece, like we've talked about. At the moment, we give our customers 2 bits of data, which is their bill. It's if you compare it to any other industry, it just doesn't stack up. So we need to really lift our game there. But equally, we've got some other great things we can give them straight off the bat with digital, which is about knowing about a leak, or at least knowing your usage patterns, or if they're becoming abnormal, to avoid bill shock and things like that. So sounds pretty simple, but if you put that into play, that's a big change on the customer side. And then on the network side, we're seeing digital meters as well as other sensors as nodes for listening in on what is largely a pretty unintelligent network generally. So the other transformative piece for us is getting more predictive and proactive, rather than the case now where customer calls in all of our faults. It's not a great customer experience, and it also doesn't show that we're on top of our game in terms of monitoring our network. So those two things, all of the processes, as Dan mentioned, associated with it, is really far reaching. I think it touches 60 to 70% of our legacy processes just in that digital metering front. So it's a big item for us. Yep.
And the digital utility program at Southeast Water is interesting, Andrew, in that you've got the business as usual metering part of the organisation in there as well. So it's not necessarily having a separate part of the business. It's bringing that part of the business with you, and interested in your views on how important that is as well.
Yeah, super important, Dan. Obviously, as you're digitising a fleet, it doesn't happen overnight. So we've got our BAU processes, of which there's many, and a team that does a great job there, and they've got great expertise, and we want to leverage that expertise in how we digitise our new processes. The other thing is just culturally, you want to keep those teams together for cross-skilling, development, etc. If you've got a sort of a BAU mechanical meters, as we call it in our world, if they're out in another group, that it's a fair bit of isolation while they're seeing the rest of the world getting digitized over here. So just from a culture point of view, it makes sense to have that group together.
And Tony, the arguments about horizontal versus vertical, I mean, you'd want to do it all at once, wouldn't you? But no organisation has the capacity or appetite to do it all at once. So how did the energy industry do it?
Oh, look, energy industry is so vast, and I think if you just split it up into your retailer, distribution, generation, they've got different drivers. And obviously in the retail sector, it's all about, with very thin margins, it's the customer experience. So the first thing you're doing is digitizing or transforming that customer experience to make it the best it can be. And then in the generation side of the business, it's really getting the most efficiencies out of your plant, the existing plant, but also looking at new technologies to be able to augment your fleet of generators and for a cleaner energy future. So it's a very different driver. I think probably the later to the party is the distributors. And they're the ones who are of the poles and wires part of the business. And they're now looking at digital transformation with the advent of smart meters, is what can they do with those, with the data coming from that. But more importantly, and probably, I guess, more connected to the water industry, is that I'm involved in what's called an EV Grid program, which is electrical vehicle trial. With the advent of electric vehicles coming on board and the uptake, is understanding what impact it has on the network. And so when people plug in their vehicles, what does it do to the network itself? And where's the best place to spend the dollars to augment or maintain that network with this new disruptor? So what the trial involves is installing smart chargers, electric vehicle chargers in people's homes, and network sensors on transformers. So we then have a digital platform in the middle to collect all that data. So the idea is that you can, in real time, manage those charges and understand the impact on the network. So what that does then is that the distributors can then focus in and understand what parts of the network they need to augment, what parts they need to have better maintenance on, or more frequent maintenance for that capacity issue. Because at the end of it, you've got a customer that needs to have service, and that service needs to be safe and it needs to be reliable. So I think if you translate that to the water industry, very similar. You've got that smart tech meter. You understand where your leakages are, where you need to focus your maintenance, where you need to focus your attention on certain assets. Very similar sort of approach. But I think for them, it's the build is the digital transformation is in the analytics, and what the biggest dollars spend is in the analytical platforms and the data scientists and capability for forecasting. So that's the key for that part of the energy industry. Mm.
So in energy, in water, you've got the equivalent of the retail and the distribution, and some also do bulk as well, depending where they are, or the generation equivalent. So is it a case of, from the financing point of view of the digital transformation, because it's expensive? I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. This is not a cheap or risk-free activity, and it can span many years and pricing periods. Justifying it economically is really important. Is it as simple a case of finding those efficiencies in the distribution side to fund the retail benefits that the customers get, do you think?
In the Australian market, those two are separate, but there is, you did touch on a point. There's certain things, nearly all the major retailers in Australia have done an end-to-end core system transformation, basically making all their systems from HR, procurement, finance, those type of systems end to end. Now, all that does really is reduce costs in the longer term, more efficient processes, and you'll be able to, the throughput's a little bit quicker. It doesn't generate new income. It doesn't generate new opportunities necessarily, but it's a necessary requirement for future micro augmentations, if you like, of their processes. So the second phase, when we built those new capabilities, is to scrub the whole business end to end on new opportunities to digitize. And to do that is to look at each of those processes, and that's where the opportunities and the hidden value that was exposed. Is that we can say very cheaply, you can develop an app to make somebody's life a little easier. Very cheaply, you can actually have robotic process automation to then release capacity in your business. So when we talk capability of the business, it's competency and capacity. And so anytime you've got a digital transformation which releases capacity, that resource, that person can then do more or explore more for the business. And I think that was the key, the light bulb moment for the energy industry, is doing these smaller things actually generated more value. And so a lot of those not necessarily had a dollar value, they were intangible, but it did deliver against the customer experience or released opportunities that could be explored with more economic rationale behind it.
Is that how you're seeing it over there, Angela?
Yeah, we've definitely been embracing the RPA in order to make some of our processes more streamlined. And then, as Tony was saying, then you have the opportunity then that the job of that individual changes. So therefore, then you can get them doing more value add tasks than repeatable and tasks that actually are adding very much value. But I guess then with this, you also need to then consider your opportunities to upskill your organization. So you really need to bring people with you and give them the tools and the training and the knowledge to be able to do those new value-added tasks, which I think certainly the water sector in the UK is pretty aging. So we do have some challenge on our hands in order to upskill the workforce in order for us to be fit for the future. But I think having those plans in place, is beneficial and is giving a better employee experience, but also then has the ripple effect, in terms of making the process much more efficient, and then perhaps saving some costs then you can put back into the business in other areas. So definitely something that we are leveraging at Northumbrian Water.
What about yourself, Andrew? What's South East Water's view on that?
Yeah, look, completely agree. We're just in our infancy in robotic process, but we see big opportunities for it there. I guess in that particular case, we've got some legacy systems where it doesn't make sense to invest in them, and the processes could be, RPA could take care of a lot of that. But Angela, to your point, exactly our thinking is higher value work for our staff. That's what it's all about. It's not about trying to remove their roles or anything like that. It's taking out all the grind work, and especially in the metering world, when things go wrong and you get piles of exceptions, the only way currently is for people to manually grind through those same processes. It's just not a good, efficient use of time. So we're all in on RPA. We're just starting on the first step.
Mm. And in terms of that concept of the investment in the digital transformation journey, what is the role of the regulator in that, knowing that the funding cycles are for 5 years in Victoria, I think 5 years in the UK as well, Angela, whereas the benefits may accrue over a longer period of time. How do we articulate and justify the benefits of these journeys?
This is definitely something that we're very keen to work on with the regulator, because it's not even just digital transformation. Now, looking at what we need to do for climate resilience and for our long-term health, we need to be looking beyond the 5-year AMP cycles, because 5 years goes by very, very quickly, and what you can actually achieve in that time, isn't often going to give you the rate of return that perhaps you need. So I think that we're working with the regulator to set out these longer term goals that do span AMPs, and certainly we're feeling that Ofwat, our regulator, are up for coming on the journey with us. Innovation is really top of the agenda right now, which is where my part of the world comes in. And I think that digital is a huge part of innovation. There is probably very few innovations that come past now that haven't got some kind of digital aspect to them that will be a key part of how we run our sector in the future. So definitely embracing what we're doing, and we'll be evolving, I think, beyond just the 5-year cycles in order to make these things happen.
And yeah, we're in the same boat, Dan. Like our digital metering business case, if you like, or NPV model is over 25 years, but we've got 5-year regulatory period. So it's about working with the regulator, telling that narrative. To your point, Angela, our business case or our model is premised on saving water, which is one of the key aspects of the sustainability. So it's much more than just a digitization for the sake of it or some small efficiencies. Is actually a really big ticket item that we're going for with this transformation. What we've got to balance is that the more you do up front, potentially your customers' bill will get hit in that regulatory period. So it's about working out what works for the customer, not just lumping them with something that they don't understand or where the benefits are years away and they can't see it. So it's really important to tell a story about how that all comes together.
I think that's a critical point, Andrew. Maybe could you talk a little bit more about what South East Water is doing to bring the customer along? I mean, obviously, if their bills are digitised, they can see the benefit and they're probably going to say, well, why haven't you done that already? But that kind of long-term structural change in order to be resilient to climate change for generations is a more nuanced argument to make. How do we get that willingness to invest in that from our customer base?
Yeah, it's a really hard one, Dan, but we've got some mechanisms. So one, we obviously engage our customers really heavily when we're doing our submissions for funding. So part of that, we're asking the hard questions of the customers about what they think we should and shouldn't do, but equally we're giving them enough context so that they see, yes, this is a big investment, but where does it lead? Now, some customers will see that and say, that's not for me, too far away. But we think on the whole, customers will really join the dots to say, it's really clear from a climate change point of view that we're potentially running out of water, or we have to build really expensive infrastructure to counter that. So if we don't do something now, there's potentially a big hit coming later. So that's the message we're trying to communicate at the moment.
And in the UK, is that similar line of argument, Angela? Or is that the burning platform that helps drive that investment case?
I think that we have a huge opportunity to work with our customers and to raise awareness of the impact that they can make on a better tomorrow. And I think that because the climate change drumbeat is getting louder and stronger, this is something that we're going to be able to effectively work with the customer on. And I think that most people are seeing the challenges ahead and are willing to work with us on this. But I think it is about giving people the information and really working with them in order to create that narrative that people can get on board with, and not that they're feeling like they're lumbered with, expensive investment programs that we're doing, really for our own gain, which is obviously not the case at all. So it is about creating that customer story that they can readily get behind and support, and for us also to do it in a sensible way that isn't going to cause significant price increases, and doing it in a way that hopefully we can box clever. And I guess this is where innovation comes in, and these different business models that hopefully can make it an affordable reality as we make our network smart, and that we enable the water sector to really be competing with the digital giants and in a way that's manageable.
And Tony, the energy sector, it's almost got the opposite burning platform, where the burning platform is most likely an oversupply of electricity through solar and other renewable sources, whereas in water it's that finite resource is getting smaller and smaller, whilst population's growing. So how did that all get framed?
It's a bit of both, because you've got yes, the solar uptake has changed the nature of generation and how we consume electricity, but also we've got aging plant, and climate change is huge in terms of generation and future generation, and moving to a cleaner energy solutions, which means moving away from fossil fuels and into more solar, hydro, those type of things. And in Australia, that can be quite challenging, being such a broad landscape, and having those opportunities to adopt wind or solar and so on. So for the generators, it becomes quite a huge challenge. But at the same time, we've got very I guess, environmentally focused and savvy customers who demand that from the other side as a retailer. So the market in Australia is very complex in trying to solve that problem, particularly through, unfortunately, with policy in Australia, which tends to fluctuate consistently. It's very difficult to build for that. But I think it's consistently, I think with the generators are looking for more cleaner solutions. You will find a lot more. I've been working with the Australian Renewable Energy Agency on some projects, and they have significant funding for clean programs and pilot studies, particularly with battery storage, solar, wind, and so on. So the industry is trying to respond to it, and they're trying to do it in a way where the old style thinking has to go away, and we have to be more innovative. And in the poles and wires part of the business, it's very similar to the water utilities, but the Australian regulators have a 5-year program and basically cap your spending on assets going forward. So the challenge is then to do more with less. And so the regulators are encouraging innovation, encouraging that digital transformation in the poles and wires business, to the extent where they almost isolate that spending and encourage that over just continuous asset maintenance of the old infrastructure.
Good, thank you, Tony. We've come to the end of the set questions, and there's been some really interesting questions come through from the audience. So I'll open up some of those questions and probably direct them a little bit, but please do feel free to jump in, panel. Angela, your organisation stood out to be the leading digital water organisation, and great to be at the leading edge. But in terms of helping others, where do you think you have been at the bleeding edge of innovations, and what learnings are there from that?
So I think that I think you're right. The aspiration to lead is a strong one, and we're only ever going to be able to do that by collaborating with others, and also looking to see what other sectors have done, like energy and other sectors that perhaps much further ahead on their journey than we are. And I think that certainly in innovation, when you are wanting to try things that are new, you have to accept that things don't always work, or certainly don't work in the way that you had envisaged that they would work. So we have the ability, when we're trying something new, to fail fast. So we look at where the killer issues are and try and get to those quickly. And then, don't spend too much time on the things that aren't working at that particular point. And it could be that the technology is not right, the time's not right, and something that we can come back to and learn from. But definitely failing fast and creating the right culture in the business, which I think is something I'm very passionate about, that projects fail and people don't. So then it is a safe environment for people to try new things. I think it's going to be one of the key things that we've done. But for sure, we kind of have a rule of about 4 out of 10 will generally work, and getting everybody in the business comfortable with this is how innovation works, and that it is definitely the way forward. Because when you have those transformational innovation programs that actually do work, they're the ones that are going to make the big difference, and we have to be brave to go after those.
Yeah. How about you, Andrew, from South East Water's perspective? South East Waters are at the leading edge, and we know that a lot of water utilities prefer to be followers rather than to lead in a particular area. What's your perspective on that, and what are the learnings out there?
Yeah, Dan, I think for my entire time, we've sort of had a culture of innovation, and that's been quite organic. It hasn't sort of generally been a sort of organised thing, and it's come from different pockets. So that's held us in really good stead. But as Angela alluded to there, if you're waiting for industry or someone else to build something for you, you can be waiting a long time. So we generally push ahead and try something, but that doesn't come without pain points. So I think if you sort of use the greater good analogy there, some of the pain points we've had around digital meters, we've had to pick sort of technology stacks when people weren't willing to jump either way, especially with IoT, which is an emerging field. We've had to make those big strategic calls early so that we can get on with things. Others will, if they end up going down the same path, will benefit from all of essentially the pain and development that we've had to go through to get there. Others will eventually get those same items as potentially plug and play. So in terms of that greater good, that's definitely something we think about, and also having Iota close by, any sort of innovations, obviously there's an incentive there for innovations to be marketed or taken elsewhere or built upon, and then even coming back to South East Water. So it is a continual cycle. The benefits of innovation are not just the immediate, they're what can be improved via going out via Iota. To your point, Angela, 4 out of 10, would be probably the same. We've many failures. Fail fast is obviously key, especially when it's consuming resources outside of the people directly working on the idea. If you've got operation staff and everyone else having to chase things that aren't quite working, it's not a great experience. So if it's not working, call it early, pivot, rehash, and go again.
There's a question in here around platform, and I think we're increasingly in a digital transformation. The data that we get off devices or our people or our customer all come in to create a rich picture of what's happening and allow us to be able to mine that data and build analytical models that will make us more efficient and move us into that kind of predictive and precise operating frame. So the platforms that bring that data in and do the analysis have obviously become a bit more strategic. So what are the reasons why these two organizations have decided to kind of build those platforms themselves versus using something off the shelf? I might pass to you, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. I was going to jump in there, waiting out the silence. Yeah, so I guess for us, IoT, whilst it's sort of everywhere now, 5 or 6 years ago, very much in its infancy, and there probably wasn't the level of maturity in platforms around at the time. And some were very electricity or energy centric, trying to sort of shoehorn themselves into water and etc. So we probably didn't like that approach. So we ended up looking at if you were to build something, what would be completely reusable, not throw away, built on some really solid foundation. So we took a cloud first approach. So everything we do IoT goes straight to the cloud. And already in terms of the infrastructure, the ease of being able to swap out modules in and out has meant that we've probably tweaked our architecture more than I could count. And if you were doing that in the traditional way of sort of big investment up front, it would just be a real nightmare to do it. So that cloud approach has allowed us the tech to grow as our deployments of sensors and things grow as well. So you're not doing this big upfront investment and then trying to follow it. You're actually growing at the same time. Of course, you get, once you pick the right provider, we use the Lentic platform, which is built on Microsoft Azure, but with Microsoft, obviously you get inherent sort of security and other pieces to it to build you towards best practice. Obviously security, privacy, massive lens that we put across all of our architecture at the start rather than the end. So that's the approach we took. So whilst we did build it together, build it ourselves, it is built from building blocks that are interchangeable and also when put together becomes a pretty powerful product.
Northumbrian's also taken a very similar approach with how we've gone about our IoT, and we also have gone with a cloud approach. Also partnering with the likes of Microsoft or Amazon, who have obviously heaps of experience that we can tap into, and I think that we've definitely taken on this partnership approach in terms of how we want to develop our platforms that are going to be fit for the future. And you absolutely bang the nail on the head with regards to cybersecurity. I mean, this is absolutely paramount now in everything we do, especially with remote devices transmitting information. We need to make sure that our networks are safe and robust and totally fit for the future using this technology that we have available to us.
Fantastic. Probably room for one more question. This one's an interesting one around organisational roles. So how do South East Water and Northumbrian align roles such as CIO, head of digital, transformation, etc., to avoid overlap and provide role clarity within the organisation? How are your organisations adapting to put digital front and centre, and what impact is that having on a traditional water business, I guess?
So Dan, I can probably just kick that off if you like, Angela. I touched on it before, but we made that conscious decision to build a dedicated DU team. So that was the big stake in the ground for us. So the CIO isn't part of that team. But obviously a key stakeholder, the whole IT or BTS as it's called for us. So I think that once we've got that structure in place, everyone via RACI and other means knows their roles and responsibilities. So in terms of the CIO and the IT, building the core infrastructure for us. So they do the infrastructure and architecture, make sure those principles are all followed, but they're probably not the people that want to try and transform and operationalize algorithms and business process. That's probably not their game. They're really to keep the solid foundation going. The DU team itself is the one that's doing that digital transformation of the processes, trying to change the business on top of it. So it's a hand in glove relationship at the moment. It seems to work well, but like I said, that DU team, which is for the first time at South East Water anyway, a matrix style structure where we've got core employees, but we've also got dotted lines into the various business units with employees that are 100% dedicated to our DU group, but they've got their peer support from their larger groups, if you like. So that's the model we're running with at the moment, and so far so good.
At Northumbrian, our CIO has had the responsibility for our digital transformation and has been a core part of that. So as well as his traditional information systems role, he's also headed up the digital transformation that we've conducted. And like Andrew and at South East Water, we did have a team where we actually pulled people out of organisational roles from different directorates who had the knowledge and information to actually work dedicatedly on that digital transformation. But we're just at the point now where actually now they're flowing back to their organisations as that part of the digital transformation now is complete. So now they're taking then the knowledge and expertise that they've picked up from being in an IS function for a couple of years and then taking that back into the business. So then that rollout is complete and is supported. And I think that that's really the critical piece in that you actually build in that longer term support. So you can't just roll it out and leave it. It is a continual journey. And we're seeing that, and we're looking to see then what are the future iterations of that rollout to make sure then that we're keeping it fit for the future and keeping on building on the momentum that we have.
Thanks very much, Angela. I love that term, fit for future. I've heard you used it quite a lot. It really talks about it being essential to the health and long-term future of the business to be digital. And I think it's a really interesting way of looking at the whole transformation lens. Tony, I'm going to give you the final word on that particular topic. So from the energy perspective, what have you seen?
Look, it's a mixed bag, because I think we talked about before that transformation is not necessarily one-dimensional. And so what we'd seen before is business transformation, like there might be a head of business transformation, but typically they would be driving through the CIO, the digital support or the technology support for that transformation. So it's mixed. I think we've gone in the organisations I've been involved with, it continually changed to find the right place for it. I think lessons learned where change management wasn't done particularly well says that, well, it's not purely a tech play. It's not purely something to hand over to the IT department and expect them to deliver a complete end-to-end transformation. Though it really becomes a separate part of the business that can look at the human part of the change management, the business process part, and the technology. So in what I've seen is actually a separate organisation and leadership reporting directly to typically the MD or CFO in my experience.
Interesting. Well, thanks very much to all the panelists. I really appreciate your time and your candor, particularly Angela, given the time in the UK now. Great shout out to you for coming along. Also Andrew and Tony as well for your valuable insights. So we've been able to have, I think, a really interesting discussion around digital transformation, coming at it from a variety of different angles, whether that be from the UK, from the energy sector, or here in Victoria from the water sector. It's not an easy topic to distill in an hour, but I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I've pulled out some really interesting points there about collaborating within the organisation outside of the water sector in order to share some of the insights and learnings, because it is a challenging process for an organisation to go through, challenging from a variety of standpoints, whilst you're trying to maintain an essential service. To transform yourself in situ is quite a difficult thing, and to find that economic justification for it as well. But thank you also to all of the audience members who've come along. If we didn't get to your question, apologies for that. We'll do our best to respond to that outside of that. And again, if you would like to share the recording of this, please feel free and do it as widely as you can. And finally, thank you again to the panelists and for everyone's time. Have a great day.
Thank you.